Gretchen and Matt, can I please test if I can hear you?
Can you hear me?
Yes, I can. Thank you.
Can you hear me?
Yes, I can. Thank you.
Can you hear me?
I can.
Perfect.
Anyone else want to test their audio while we're at it?
Can you hear me, Lisa Kurt?
Yes, I can, Lisa. Thank you.
Thank you.
Just wait another minute or two and we'll get started. It's 53 up here in Santa Fe. What's the temperature like everywhere else?
70s in Hillsborough.
Nice. Hey, Matt, can you see my slideshow?
Yep.
Great, thank you. Yeah, April-like weather in Clovis. It is April-like. We sure could use some more snow up here. Okay, I think we're going to get started. Welcome, everyone. Thank you so much for coming. This is the application assistance training session for the Cultural Properties Restoration Fund grant program. My name is Carla McWilliams. I'm the Deputy Director at the Historic Preservation Division. I'd like my three colleagues to show their video and introduce themselves, please.
So my name is Stephen Moffson, and I'm the State and National Register Coordinator at the Historic Preservation Division.
Thank you, Stephen.
I am Gretchen Brock. I'm the Architectural Reviewer here at HPD.
Thank you, Gretchen.
I am Matt Syons. I coordinate our historic markers and tax credit programs at HPD.
Thank you. So the four of us make up what is called the Built Environment Team at HPD, whereas most of the rest of our staff are archaeologists. The format of today is that we will have introductions, and then which we've done already, and then I will present information about preparing your application for the CPRF. So I'm going to call it the CPRF moving forward, Cultural Properties Restoration Fund. And I'd like to ask attendees to turn off their video and make sure you're muted during the presentation portion, just to make sure we can focus on the presentation. I did want to start with one thing. I had a question yesterday, and I think it's an interesting question, and it might be of interest to some other applicants. A person called me from a city, and the city owns a former post office building, and they have a preservation plan from 2009 for the building, but they haven't had a preservation consultant look at the building in recent years. So they're interested in applying for the program, and they wanted to know what would be what would be the most appropriate. Should they apply for a plan, a revised plan moving forward, or should they go ahead and apply for projects that maybe their buildings crew have identified? So I talked to a couple of my colleagues before our session today here to pose this question to them. What do you think? And so I'd love it if Stephen, Gretchen might jump in. Matt, you didn't know I was going to do this part, but I just thought it was an interesting question, and it might help others in terms of deciding what to apply for their own projects. Anyone want to jump in?
I'll jump in. This is Gretchen. So one thing to consider is it's always great to have a preservation plan, even if it's an older plan, because that will help you kind of recognize what the most important historic characteristics of your building are and what maybe some of the most immediate needs. What I would recommend in this case is if there is a particular problem with the building, like if it needs a new roof, or if there's major leaks, or if there's foundation issues, or something that needs immediate attention that's more of a brick and mortar project, is to go ahead and apply for that, because we want to make sure that the building is secure and watertight, and there's no immediate structural or mechanical or roof issues. And so that would be a recommendation for this one. If not a lot has changed in the building since 2009, if nothing has really been done, nothing's been updated, then you can still use that preservation plan. It comes down to, it depends on the building and depends on the plan and how thorough it was, and if anything has really happened to the building in those intervening years. And this would go the same thing for any sort of archaeological site also. It's not just building.
Yeah, for me, this question and just got me thinking about what we're really looking for in your application. We really want to know what you're planning to do with the funding, and we really want you to be as specific as possible. We do recognize that there are challenges with buildings where you don't often know exactly what is going on. But for our application process, we'd really like it if you can identify what projects are needed and what funding should, the estimated funding for those projects would be. So I don't know if Stephen or Matt has anything else to add to that. You're not. Oh,
Carla, I don't have anything to add to that.
okay, thank you.
Me neither.
Okay, thanks, guys. All right, so I'm going to jump in with this PowerPoint, and hopefully it will help you in your application. So the Cultural Properties Restoration Fund, or CPRF, was part of legislation that was signed by Governor Michelle Lujan Grisham in 2023 as part of the Land of Enchantment Legacy Fund. The CPRF is one of 8 funds across 6 state departments that are receiving funding. It is state funding, it's not federal funding. We're currently in round 2 of the fund. We're anticipating that 3 more years for 5 years total will be for the duration of the grant program. Round 1, we had applications that were, or an announcement went out prior to the holiday season in 2022, and then the applications were due February, no, make it at 2023, excuse me. And applications were due February 5th. We received 33 applications. There was a core team of built environment folks from our office and other staff that reviewed all of the applications, and the Cultural Properties Review Committee also reviewed those applications. And the 5 projects that were selected were approved by the Cultural Properties Restoration Fund in June, and we're currently still in a contract development stage. So the 5 funded projects include the Santa Fe Main Library, which includes rehabilitation drawings, the Luna Mimbres Museum, which is a window study for the museum. The Silver City Waterworks will have interior rehabilitation completed. Janeta Pueblitos, 4 of them in the Navajo Nation, will be stabilized. And then our final project is stabilization work at the fire station at Albuquerque Rail Yard. So for more information, You probably have already located information on our website, but this is a picture of our website, nmhistoricpreservation.org. And you can find the link to the Cultural Properties Restoration Fund grant program by either clicking on Find Out More or clicking on Programs, and you'll find our website that way. So this is a shot of the CPRF website on our page. And this is a screenshot of what that CPRF page looks like as you scroll down. So there's a lot of information on the page. There's an announcement on the page. There's information about how the grant program is administered. There's a manual and the supporting legislation. There's an FAQ document if you want to take a look at that, and you can download that. Then there's information about the schedule. So we have the upcoming grant application deadline of March 18th at 5 p.m. And then the award notification, April 29th, and an anticipated start date of July 15. So grants in the CPRF go for a term of 2 years. And then all of the application forms, there are 12 application forms, which may seem daunting, but they're 1 page or 1.5 pages, may be found for download on that same web page. Who is eligible to apply? State agencies, which is a department, agency, institution, or political subdivision of the state of New Mexico. So this includes cities, towns, municipalities, villages, and counties. It also includes universities. It includes agencies, departments of the state, like the Department of Economic Development, Department of Cultural Affairs, etc. It also includes land grant associations and acequia associations. What properties are eligible for the program? A cultural property is the description that we're using for the property that is eligible, and we'll have a discussion of that in more detail coming up. But that property also needs to be owned by the state agency. So some sample questions that we've had regarding about eligibility: can a city partner with a nonprofit or private property owner and work on a private property or one owned by a nonprofit? No, is the answer. The application must be from a state agency. And so of course that state agency, again, is the definition of all those entities I just listed. And the property must be owned, controlled, or operated by the state agency. Our property is listed in the National Register and we're a nonprofit. Are we eligible to apply? No, the CPRF is only open to state agencies. We're a tribal entity. Can we apply? No, the CPRF is only open to state agencies. Does the CPRF require national significance? The answer is no, and this relates to what the designation level of the cultural property is, and so we'll talk a little bit more about that coming up. Is the federal government eligible to apply? No, it's only open to state agencies. We are a state agency and have a historic museum building, but it's been changed and added onto over the years. Can we apply? I have the answer here is no, but really the answer is maybe. It depends if the building is still eligible for listing in the National Register. So we'll get a little more into this in a minute in terms of staff being available to evaluate existing historic integrity. The National Register listed structure that we own was moved from its original site where it was listed. Is it eligible? No. The property has been removed from its original historic context when it was listed, so it's no longer eligible. In our grant application, we have a scoring matrix. This is you can find this in the manual, and so we thought we would focus our presentation on looking at all the categories of the scoring matrix first. So our first category is the scope of work, professional expertise category, which is it calls for an allowable 30 points. Also in this category is the damage, deterioration, or threat. So we're going to get a little more into this in a minute here. So in this case, this is application form number 3, which focuses on the scope of work, damage, deterioration, and threat, and professional expertise. And you can see that's a screenshot from the webpage, the application form to download. So this is what the form looks like, and there's lots of text in red, but at first there's the directions box, which you'll delete. And then basically these this is a Word document that you download and you fill in your answers for each of the boxes. With the scope of work, professional expertise, and damage, deterioration, and threat, we're looking for for you to tell us as specifically and as succinctly as you can about what your project entails. We ask you to be as descriptive as possible, and that you conform to the requested word count for each of the boxes. Because the form has the most questions of all the application forms, we divide it into 3 parts. So the first one that's addressed on the form is damage, deterioration, and threat. So that first question says, describe the current condition of the property and how the property has sustained damage or deterioration. Describe how the property is currently threatened due to its condition, or if there are extenuating concerns affecting the property that will be remedied by the project. So here we want you to tell us about the property's current condition. How has it sustained damage or deterioration? What are the current threats? And what are the remedies proposed for these extenuating concerns? And we want you to describe that in 250 words or less. For scope of work, the 5 questions include what work will be completed as part of the grant project, what elements of the cultural property will be affected through the proposed project, what drawings are available to illustrate the proposed project, and we ask you to provide a cost estimate for the project and describe if the project is going to be receiving in-kind assistance. So again, be as detailed as you can, but succinct. Tell us what work will be completed and what parts of the property will be affected. Do you have drawings and plans that are available for the project already? If so, that would be great to include. Include the cost estimate for the project. We want you to find out how much it will cost to do the project that you're suggesting that you want to do. Provide the details about in-kind assistance. In-kind assistance is defined as non-monetary contribution of goods, services, or volunteer work that support the project. And then the third section of that application form number 3 addresses professional expertise. What professional expertise contractors are available to complete the project scope of work, and what experience does that contractor have in this type of project? So I thought I would open it up for any questions you might have on the scope of work, damage, deterioration, and threat professional expertise form. Anyone out there have a question? We can pause here for a minute. Any of my staff that, go ahead.
I have a question. Yes, I'm with Sandoval County Tourism, and we have the historical property here with a building. It's an adobe building, 1-story. And will this grant cover a new roof for that building?
It possibly could. What we would want to do is make sure that your property is listed in the National Register or State Register.
It is.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
And then what Stephen will get into in a little bit, we'll talk about making sure that the historic integrity is still intact in the building in order to be eligible for the grant. And what you can do with that is to work with him in terms of sending in photographs of the building so that he can make a determination that the building is still eligible for listing.
Okay.
So I can help you with that. and direct you to Stephen as well.
Okay, thank you.
Anyone else out there have a question? Because we'll move on. Okay. All right, so our next category from the scoring matrix that we're going to focus on is grant management. So this is application form number 4, which is one page, and the questions there ask you to tell us about your grant management experience and to be as detailed and succinct as possible and keep to the word count for each of the categories. So who will serve as the grant manager? What experience does the applicant organization have in grant management? Has the applicant worked with the HPD before on a grant project? Has the organization ever defaulted on or not completed a grant project? Please describe any other pertinent experience related to grant management. Describe how the project will be managed. And what we do ask you to do on each of the forms is fill in the top area, delete the directions box, and then change your red text to black. So are there any questions related to grant management? Okay, we're going to move on. So our next category in the scoring matrix is preservation standards, and this is for 20 points for the overall score. The Historic Preservation Division is like other preservation organizations across the country, and it utilizes the Secretary of the Interior standards for the treatment of historic properties when reviewing projects that affect historic resources. On this form, which is application form number 5, we list all of the 10 rehabilitation standards within the SOI standards, so the Secretary of the Interior standards. And we list all 10, and what we ask you to do is to read all of the 10 SOI standards for rehabilitation and determine which project, which of the standards apply. And your project may not only have one standard, it may have 2 or 3. And what we're hoping that this does is to help people have a better understanding of the preservation standards that we're applying to the project, and to have an understanding of what those standards are and what we're looking for in your application. So we want you to select the standard that best exemplifies the work of the project, and also that the SOI standards emphasize repair first before replacement, and if replacement is needed, that replacement in kind is the direction. And that the standards, the SOI standards, focus on preserving historic character. And then we want you to describe how your project will comply with those SOI standards, and how the project complies with the spirit of the standards, which is the focus on preserving historic material and historic integrity. Any questions on preservation standards? A little bubbly water here, okay. All right, so our next category is long-term preservation, which is worth 10 points in the scoring matrix. And this form has 2 questions in it. Please describe how the organization will maintain and care for the cultural property after the work is completed. And we also want you to check the box to acknowledge that a 10-year preservation agreement will be established during the contractual period. What we want to know is, we're giving you this grant money now, but how will the building be taken care of after the project term is over? And it would be really great if applicants can focus on what type of planning they have for the building moving forward. Any questions about long-term preservation? Lisa, are you trying to talk? If you are, you're muted. Okay, Lisa, you're still muted if you're trying to ask us a question.
Oh, I see.
There we
Yes,
go.
I'm sorry, I sent it through chat. I had a question on number 4 for the SOI standards.
Yeah.
And could you provide a little more information about that? Is there so much time it passes and it becomes historically significant, or what is that?
So you're if I want to make sure I have your question clear, are you asking when do the preservation standards apply?
No, it's number 4, changes to a property that have acquired historical significance in their own right.
Oh, number 4.
Could you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, so so what Lisa's referring to is number 4 in the Secretary of the Interior standards for rehabilitation, which focuses on changes to a building that can happen over time. So with a lot of buildings, they change over time. Additions are put on the building, additions are removed from buildings, and so what that question is asking is, have those changes that have happened to that building acquired historic significance of their own? So say a building was built in 1930, but in the mid 1950s, it had several modern style additions put onto the building. We may look at that building and say that those additions, while maybe not matching the original building, which is Pueblo style, have acquired significance of their own because they were built during a time period that was more than 50 years ago. And so they've acquired a certain sense of historic, they bring integrity to the building from changes that happen historically. Did I describe that good for my colleagues? Any other?
Yeah, Carla, that was, yeah, you summed it up fine.
Good.
So
Thanks,
50
guys.
years is it sounds like a time period you're looking at.
Yeah,
Let's say we
have a
replaced tile 50 years ago in the kitchen. You know, it's not the original, but if we did it 50 years ago, that tile is now significant.
It could be. It depends on the building. It depends on the type of tile. It depends on the significance of the space. A lot of times we don't look at interiors unless the building is individually listed. It's hard to answer the question definitively at this point.
Okay, thank you.
Let me just make one correction real quick.
Please.
For this, we do look at interiors for grant projects.
Yeah. Yeah. So for the
not just that
CPRF,
exterior.
we will be looking at what changes are being completed on the interior. Yeah.
And also, I wrote this in the chat too about generally what Carla just said about changes in the past 50 years. And under the rehabilitation standards, you know, it's also kind of a hierarchy of most significant spaces or the most significant aspects of a historic property. So things like kitchens and bathrooms get changed a lot over time. Those are more utilitarian spaces, whereas we might look at changes that have happened to, you know, maybe the main public spaces a little bit differently. So, does that
Thank
make
you.
Thank you, Gretchen.
Let me, if I could just state something a little more clearly, just so it's clear.
Thank you.
That if just because a change occurred more than 50 years ago, it doesn't mean it's significant. So that's something that Stephen and the rest of the staff here would probably have to look at to determine. So 50 years is a benchmark, but that doesn't necessarily give it significance.
Thank you.
Thank you, Matt. Okay, so did that answer your question, Lisa?
It did. Thank you so much.
Okay. So now I think that was it for long-term preservation. Were there any questions related to long-term preservation? Okay. We're going to go to match now. What we want you to do on the match form is to complete the form, and there's 3 areas. So we want you to check one of the boxes. We commit to match, or we don't commit to match. We aren't able to match. And then if you are matching, planning on matching the grant project funding, We ask you to put your organization in and then also illustrate whether the funds are going to be in cash or in kind services. And then we want you to sign the form at the bottom, just committing to what the match will be. I just want to point out that match is not a requirement for the grant project. But if match is included, then it's worth an additional 5 points. Is there any questions about match? Okay, now we're going to get into the cultural property special status of the property. So this is the application form number 7. So the first part of this form, we broke it into a couple sections, asked for the location of the property and the historic name of the property and who the current owner is. And then the second part asks an additional 6 questions asking you what the property listing status is. We want you to check the box for where it is listed, if it's listed in the state register, the national register, the local register. If it's not listed, it has our office weighed in about the building being eligible or the site being eligible for listing. We want you to tell us what the use of the property is. Is it being, if it was built as a residence and it's being used as an office building, to tell us about that. We want you to tell us about the building history and the construction history. So this includes dates of construction and design, the architect's name. We want you to describe the property in 350 words or less. A lot of this you can find in the National Register nomination, but we don't want you to copy the information in the nomination. We want you to write your own property description of the building. We also want you to write your own historical background of the building as well. And then the 9th question is an opportunity to list where you got that information from. Okay, so.
Hey, Carla, quick question.
Yeah, Matt.
Will we have someone who has to leave due to a conflict? Will the recording here be available to others or no?
Yes, I will make it available on the YouTube. So if you email me, I will send you the link.
Okay, great. I hope they be Mollard in chat. That's just email Carla whenever you need to.
Thank you. Okay, so where did I leave off? Okay, so this is where Stephen can jump in and tell us a little bit more about property eligibility.
It's me.
Okay, I think I can focus this on really what you need to know about the National Register and how you can use that information in your application. So basically, the Historic Preservation Division maintains 2 cultural registers. We have the State Register of Cultural Properties, and one could also be listed in the National Register of Historic Places. You could be listed in one, or you can be listed in both. But you only have to be listed in one register. And that's important because it's not only an item that you're scored on in the matrix Carla described, but it's also necessary that you're listed in order to qualify for the CPRF grant. So and I'll come back to how you might know or find out if your property is listed. And listed is the term we use just to describe properties that have gone through the process and have become entered into the national or the state register. To be listed, to be eligible, a property has to be 50 years of age or older. And then it still has to look the way it did during the historic period. So it might have elements of its historic design and materials, like that would be really important. There's some other qualities that we judge the authenticity of a property and how well it survives, but design, materials, and the workmanship that goes into a building are really, those are probably the three you really need to focus on. And then also a property has to be eligible, a property has to be associated with an important historical event or as an important person. It could be a really good example of a type of architecture. And then lastly, it could be a historic site or an archaeological site. But we don't get a lot of those because they often don't really require a lot of work. So you need to be listed in a state or national register at the outset of this qualification period. But we also will need to know that your property continues to be eligible for listing in the state or national register. So you might have had your property listed 30 or 40 or 50 years ago. So we want to know what's happened in that intervening time, and if your property has maybe suffered or lost historic fabric or its design has been changed. We want to be able to evaluate that because we can really only in this program provide grants to properties that are still eligible for listing in the National Register. So if you want to find out if you are listed in the state or national register, you can contact me directly. You can have my information here in this slide, but it's also available on our website. And I'm happy to help you with that. Also, we have a really good guide to how to take photos of your National Register building, photos around the outside and also the inside, but the kinds of photos that are really going to tell us that your property is still eligible for listing. And so those are the things you need to kind of focus on. But I think those are the basics. And beyond that, if you have additional questions, you should feel free to contact me at stephen.mofson@dca.nm.gov, or you can call me at 505-476-0444. Carla, did I miss anything, you think?
No, I don't. Does Matt or Gretchen have anything else? I'm just putting your phone number in the chat and your email.
Oh, thank you.
I would just
send it.
say, oh, go ahead, Carla.
Matt, I just sent it to you only, so will you put it in the general chat, please?
Sure.
Thank you.
I would just say that regarding figuring out if the property you're looking to get some work done on is eligible or not for this program, I think we would really recommend you figure that out as soon as possible before deciding to even complete the entire application. So get in touch with staff, in particular, get in touch with Stephen here, so we can help you figure out if you are good to go and move forward with an application.
Good idea, Matt. Yeah, I think making sure you're an eligible organization and making sure you're proposing work on an eligible property are the two important things to consider before moving ahead with putting together your application. Thanks. Okay. So next we're going to we're moving away from the scoring matrix, but also focusing on being able to show us what the building looks like or what the site looks like. And one great way to do this is to complete the photos form, which is form number 8. And what we want you to do is to take photographs of every side of the building and photographs of the interior of the building. And then we want you to key the photo locations. So the locations of each of the photographs should be keyed to a site plan or floor plan. So what you're seeing here are the photographs from the example that was provided on our website of a complete application for a hypothetical project on the Baton Memorial Building, which is the building where we all work, where our office is. And so we made up this hypothetical project that the building owner will do. So as you can see here, photo 1 and photo 2 are marked by arrows up in that site plan showing the angles of the photographs that were taken. And you can see photo 1 on the right and photo 2 at the bottom on the right. So what we want you to do here is to give us a sense of the building and a sense of the site, so that because unfortunately we're located in Santa Fe and we're not able to travel to all of the sites that are being proposed for work. And so this helps us to get a sense of the eligible property and what will be happening. So as you can see, here's the photo 1 and the picture of photo 1 and photo 2 that was taken at the northwest corner of the building. No photos or insufficient photos to describe the property will be negatively counted towards the scope of work score, because it's part of telling us what you want to do. And here's an example of the floor plan showing the interior of the Baton building, and the arrows, the red arrows and numbering showing all the interior photos. If your project is only for exterior work, you still need to include photographs of the interior. And that's because we don't have a sense of the building. We probably do not have a sense of what the building looks like and what sometimes exterior work can affect interior spaces as well. So now we're getting into the budget, which is application form 11. And there's a sample budget in Excel. So it's the only form that's in Excel format for download. And what we want you to do here is to fill in, if your project includes 3 different projects on the eligible property, we want you to divide them out into 3 different projects in the budget. What we want you to do for each project is to name the project on the Excel spreadsheet, name who the coordinator is, name who the contractor will be, show what the materials will be. In some cases, some projects may not have materials or mileage. Some contractors charge mileage, and that might be a cost that is sought after to be included. So we want you to itemize as much as possible all of the project costs, and then to subdivide the projects into individual projects. One of the reasons why we want to do this is that based on funding availability and the different applications we may be receiving, we may be able to fund 1 of the projects or 2 of the projects, and not the 3rd project. So it just helps us in our review in determining what can be funded as part of the grant program. Any questions on the budget? Lisa?
Yes, I do have a question. So we need estimated costs. And so then we ask, let's say we have a historic architect we're working with, but then he's talking with Cornerstones about the Adobe repair, a nonprofit. And then we will need stucco work. And so we're talking to, a contractor we really like. But just the fact that I list them in this budget will probably disqualify them from the bid process. So they're not on the state contract. And so the county will say they know too much about the project and so will be disqualified. Do you have anything to help me with this?
Yeah, so it is challenging when we have procurements that we have to follow, and bidding processes that we have to follow. So my suggestion here would be to just say contractor number one, and just not name them, but use an estimate, and then describe who they are as much as possible where the description is needed in the professional expertise section.
So I wouldn't say, let's say Cornerstones. I wouldn't name them anywhere.
You could say if it's going to affect your procurement, I would suggest no, but you do
Or I
need to
might be able to say companies like Cornerstone have,
Yeah,
you know, significant experience.
Matt,
Okay.
you're gonna weigh in?
Don't we need to see, I'm trying to figure out how she can get around this, because
I
don't we
know.
need to see an actual estimate as well from the contractor?
Well, that would be ideal, but we understand that it, I don't know. I don't know how to handle this.
I know you asked for an estimate, really, because
Right.
like, we're not going to cut into our stucco and make all these big windows to really analyze what's going on with the Adobe brick. You know, we don't know if we're going to get the money. Now we have to get someone in to do all this repair, you know, and so we tell people it's not a bid, it's an estimate, you know.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah. I think if you were to frame it as an estimate and potential contractor, and then that would be confirmed as part of it through the contracting period then.
Yes. Okay, thank you.
Does that
That
make sense?
helps.
I hope. Okay, good. How about any other questions regarding a budget? Okay.
I have a question I just thought of, Carla.
Yes, sir.
I guess, I think we kind of just answered it, but, when a project is approved and we decide to fund it, we've approved the project and not the contractor, is that right?
Correct. As part of the
Okay.
contracting process, we would identify, it would likely include information that HPD has to approve the contractor prior to issuance of funding.
Right. Okay, so in other words, just to let folks know that the contractor you provide an estimate for doesn't necessarily have to be the one you go with to do the work. It just, the work should be the same though, more or less.
Correct. Thank you. Okay, so yeah, so this is where I just went into discuss the budget line items a little more thoroughly. One thing to note is that administrative costs, so costs to manage the project should not exceed 25% of what the requested grant funding is. Just to further details about different projects. So project one, roof repair, the contractors chose roofing, roof materials are $75,000. And then over on the right, you have the opportunity to put the amounts you're requesting from HPD versus the amounts for those line items that are going to be paid for by match. And similarly, for the stucco repair, all of the costs for the stucco repair in this hypothetical example are suggested for payment by the grant. And then you total project one and project two. And in this case, it has a grant request of $175,700, and then the match was $700. So we're not suggesting that your match be small like this per se, but it's just an example. So. Okay, so here's a screenshot of the sample application that is available on our website for this hypothetical project that's at the Baton Building. And finally, just some things to think about related to the application forms. Each has the project name and applicants at the top for each of the forms. So you want to make sure you're filling in the same name and the same applicant name on each of the forms and changing that text from red to black. And then there's a directions box on each of the form, and you want to delete that directions box. This is all in Microsoft Word. And then when you're done filling out each of the boxes in the forms, change that red text to black. And then you're going to want to save each of the forms as an individual PDF, and then you're going to want to combine all of the documents into one form. So that's the end of the presentation. I think we addressed most of the forms. We'd be happy to answer any other questions.
I do have a question in the chat from Adriana, Carla.
Okay.
She has a project for a historic courthouse for hydronic heating and a cooling system. Will this be eligible work?
Hey, Gretchen, are you familiar with hydronic heating and cooling? Gretchen?
Sorry. No, I'm not. I'll have to look it up. But you know, updating the heating and cooling system would be an eligible project.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's my thought is, without knowing details, that would be something that could be funded.
Yeah, we would just look at how that updated HVAC system is, how will it affect the historic property? And is it being sensitively put in?
Yeah, you're gonna be running line sets all over the exterior. If so, where? Things like that. Is there a condenser going somewhere? Several condensers, depending on the size.
Yeah, if you think about
Stuff
where the
like that.
condensers are going, if you're going to put them and shield them towards the rear of the property, if that's possible, that kind of thing. Do we have any other questions out there?
Adriana, did you have anything else on that particular question?
No, I don't. Thank you.
Yep.
Well,
Does anyone have any questions that they'd like to bring up about property eligibility while you have us? Is everyone sure they have an eligible property?
Yes.
we're happy to answer any further questions. All of our email addresses are on the screen, so please make notes and feel free to reach out if you have any questions. We thank you for coming. We look forward to receiving your application. Please feel free to reach out with any questions.
Okay.
Oh, hold on, Carla. We have
Hi.
a question in the chat.
Oh, goody.
Would documentation of rock art accompanied by interpretive infrastructure qualify for the program?
Stephen, what's your thoughts on eligibility related to
Yeah,
rock art
if
and
if it's listed in the national or state registers, it could absolutely qualify as an archaeological site.
I forget some of our discussion on interpretive projects as well right now.
Well,
yeah, interpretive was related. We were open to interpretive projects related to properties versus museums.
yeah, but this could be a project that relates directly to the cultural resource.
Correct.
Depending what they're doing with the rock art. Good
Okay.
question.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's a good
I think
question.
the big thing would be to figure out if it's listed.
I'm sorry, I'm just making sure I get the link for the recording.
Are there
Any other
final
questions out there? Yeah. Um, okay, so I posted where the video will be posted in the chat. You can also just Google New Mexico Historic Preservation Division for YouTube, and it'll be on our page. We also have a recording of our previous session, which was on February 5th. Thank you all for coming. We're glad you could join us today.
Thank you.
Thanks, everyone.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
The 5th was, we had another application Zoom training session then on the 5th. So there was a recording of that session as well. Bye-bye.